My presentation is on North Carolina breweries. As you guys know, there's a lot of breweries around here in the area. There's a few even that just opened. Actually, with ISBE, we went to Carolina Brewing Company, Holly Springs, just a couple weeks ago. And so I'm going to see if I can show you guys a little bit more about what North Carolina has to offer for beer and brewing. Okay, so to start off with, I found this awesome graphic. Okay, it's talking about our beers literally all over the map. This is actually from one of the breweries that I found. It was in western North Carolina, and it looked like it had a little bit too much Carolina blue on it, so I put a little bit of, Stay Red up at the top to balance it out. Okay. But it is true, beer is really all over the place, like anywhere you go in North Carolina. I'll get to that a little bit later. Okay, so North Carolina, like as a brewing center, you want to know kind of like what we're talking about in reference to like other states and things of that nature. We actually have the largest number of craft breweries in the whole South, which is pretty awesome. We have 70, more than 70 actually, breweries and brew pubs. I don't get to what that is in a second. Okay, so there's actually awards for beer, okay? And we're the most decorated state in the South. We have more medals for the World Beer Cup, which is actually a real thing, and the Great American Beer Festival than any of our neighboring states. And actually, we have a North Carolina Brewers Cup, which is coming up in just a couple weeks. And it's going to be at the State Fair, and they have a Facebook page, which I now like, and you guys should too. And so a little bit of history of brewing in North Carolina. We have our timeline here. And the oldest brewery in North Carolina was actually in 1774, and it was the Single Brothers Brewery and Distillery. It's actually in Salem, which is part of like Winston-Salem now. And it's kind of funny because it was actually part of like this Mormon culture that they had there, where it was basically all these bachelors living in a house together, and they started like a slaughterhouse and like a brewery and all these types of things. It's kind of weird. But yeah, so they're like, we're gonna, brew beer and make meat. I guess, I don't know. And then we have a big gap basically until about 1985. There's some things that happened mainly because of like prohibition, things of that nature. But that's when brew pubs were made legal in the state. And so a brew pub is just like a small brewery. Basically, you have like a cap on the amount of barrels that you're allowed to make in a year, but more frequently it's where they make the beer on site and then they sell it to you. You can have like usually some place for you to like drink it there. There's usually like a restaurant component or something to it. So the first one was called the Weeping Radish. And that should actually be, this should be in 1986 there. So that was the first one to open. It was in Anteo. You guys know where Anteo is? I had to look it up. It's actually on Roanoke Island. So it's right over here, basically. So I thought that was kind of interesting that, first brew pub, a little lost colony action. But, okay. So moving right along, the brewery that we went to for the ISB meeting was Carolina Brewing Company. Like I said, that's in Holly Springs. And their first beer was the Carolina Pale Ale. It's one of their more popular beers still today. And it was actually the first delivery of that was to 42nd Street Oyster Bar, so in Raleigh. And there's their telltale symbol that they have, their lion. And I remember when we actually went on the brewing tour, then somebody had asked, well, why did you pick that as their symbol? And one of the reasons that they said was that they wanted something like an animal, but they couldn't really decide on what, and they didn't want it to make it look like any of the local team sports or anything like that. So they just picked something that they thought was like bold and like masculine, I guess, or something, and so they picked lion. I think it worked. And so a quote that they had from one of the founders, Greg Shuck, was that all it takes is a liver and a dream, which is true. One of the next breweries that I'm going to talk about is Duck Rabbit Craft Brewery. They consider themselves the dark beer specialists. And if you guys are unfamiliar with it, one of the keys that they have is actually their logo, which is a classic sort of diagram that if you look at the image from different aspects or different perspectives, it looks like both a duck and a rabbit. You guys see it? See it? Yeah. So you gotta wonder, like literally, okay, well, why would you pick that for your brewery and everything? And so as it turns out, it was actually the guy who founded it, Paul Philippon. He used to be a philosophy professor. And so I guess he had seen it in one of his books that he was fond of, from philosophy and different perspectives and all that. And so he decided that he was going to use that. I guess he really did enjoy that a lot back in his days as his teaching. So the next big thing that happened in running for the state was the Pop the Cap bill, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with, but up until 2005, then there was actually a cap on the alcohol by volume that you could have in a beer, and it was capped at 6%. And then the people spoke, and they said that we want more alcohol in our beer, and so they actually increased it up to 15%, is what's allowed by state law now. And so they had actually a little propaganda here and everything. It's say we called, we wrote, we conquered, and at the bottom, you probably can't see it, it's a little bit blurry as an image, but it says, it began as a newspaper article and evolved into an amazing statewide grassroots movement. Through letters, lobbying, educational testing, and unexpected passion for better beer, we changed the law in North Carolina. The people spoke, the legislation listened. We popped the cap. So that's what we have there. So now that I've talked a little bit about the history of brewing, let's talk about where all of them are. Okay, so statewide, they're pretty much all over the place. Basically, if you look at any of the metropolitan areas, like Asheville and Charlotte, the Piedmont, Winston-Salem, Greensboro, High Point, especially around the Triangle, all the areas where there's a lot of people, there's going to be a lot of breweries, a lot of beer. So if we zoom in a little bit, in the Triangle, which I'm pretty proud of this, there's Raleigh, we have more breweries and brew pubs than Chapelville and Durham combined. So we are winning, basically. Okay. And then just to wrap up, I have a little bit of some statistics that I found for brewing in North Carolina. These are a little bit out of date. These are from 2011, the statistics, but they still kind of show general trends and where things are going. So one of the things that I thought was really interesting to know is that Asheville actually has won Beer City USA 3 years in a row. I don't know if they won it the last 2 years, but they apparently have some really good beer out there. And one of my favorite statistics that we had was actually, this is the gallons consumed per capita in 2010. So almost 20 gallons. I like to feel like I contributed to that. And so that's basically all I have for things. Do you guys have any questions? Who's gonna like the Facebook page? Yeah. Who wants to go to the fair and try some beer?
What is your favorite local one?
My favorite local one? I'm a big fan of anything IPAs or stouts. So, I have some beers that I prefer as opposed to different breweries, but I really do like Duck Rabbit. And I threw in, Carolina Brewing Company just because we had gone there. And I know some people were really familiar with it and everything, but I would say probably Duck Rabbit's up there.
You mentioned that North Carolina was the biggest in the South. Do you know any other states that are large or filled with breweries and brewers?
Yeah, so it turns out that California obviously has a lot of breweries and everything in there, like towards San Diego, where Jamie was. There's a lot in the Bay Area and everything as well. Colorado is huge. I guess they're on top of mountains and stuff and hiking all the time, so they have a lot of beer out there. There was one brewery that I had found that they actually have a restaurant brew pub area in Charlotte, and I thought it was a Carolina a brewery until I looked deeper into it, and it was actually from Colorado, but they have 387 beers that they make. Wow. The largest one in North Carolina that has the largest by beers by number is Natty Green's, and they've made 61 beers. So they don't obviously have all of them at the same time or anything, but I mean, that's a lot of different kinds of beer, recipes and, development, and I'm sure there's some quality assurance involved in that. I could be a taste tester for that. So, anything else?
Did you know that Anheuser-Busch actually had a distribution facility a little bit north of here?
Where?
just north of downtown Raleigh is now a self-storage place.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, one of the other ones that I was meaning to try to visit too was Aviator, because it's like in an airport hangar. And yeah, there's a lot of places that have kind of been like renovated and everything. Like I think Big Boss took over a place that was formerly some other place, the brewery, and the same thing with Duck Rabbit actually. Like over in Farmville, it used to be something else, and then they kind of just like took the space and like retrofitted it all. So yeah, it's pretty sweet. You kind of have to. They work with it a little bit into like their brewery's sort of personality, things. Because that's half the thing. Like, it's not just about your beer tasting good. They want it to kind of be like, oh, it looks cool, like the label and all that stuff. And so it's definitely something, yeah, that kind of